I woke up from the car crash to find my husband had already arranged my financial funeral. While I was still seeing double, he filed for divorce and claimed I was mentally unstable. He turned our life savings into invisible numbers, convinced the accident had wiped my memory. But he made a critical error. My head might be foggy, but I audit risk for a living, and I never let a discrepancy slide. My name is Brielle Hart, and at 37 years old, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. The return trip to our home in the quiet suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, was a nauseating blur of gray skies and motion sickness. My head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic pain, a constant reminder of the car accident that had left me with a concussion and a terrifying tendency to lose track of the last 10 minutes. Gavin Hale, my husband of 10 years, parked our SUV with practiced smoothness. He was 39 years old, handsome in that sharp corporate way, but as he hurried around to open my door, I felt a strange chill. "Careful, Brielle." "Let me help you," Gavin said, his voice dripping with excessive sweetness. He gripped my elbow, guiding me up the walkway, but when I looked up to thank him, the smile on his face didn't reach his eyes. He wasn't looking at me with love or relief. He was scanning me, his gaze cold and calculating, like a project manager inspecting a site before signing off on a demolition order. "I am okay, Gavin, just a little dizzy," I whispered, trying to pull my arm back. "No, you are not okay. You are confused," he insisted, steering me toward the living room sofa. "Sit here. I need to take this call. It is urgent." He didn't wait for my consent. He stepped out onto the back porch, sliding the glass door shut. But the latch was old. It didn't click all the way. I leaned back, closing my eyes, trying to stop the room from spinning. Then his voice drifted through the crack, low and urgent. "The plan is in motion. She believes it. Yeah. The doctor said her memory is shot. We are good to go." My eyes snapped open. The dizziness vanished for a split second, replaced by a spike of adrenaline. The plan Gavin turned, saw me watching him through the glass, and his posture shifted instantly. He ended the call and walked back inside, a mask of concern sliding back into place. "Just work logistics, babe." "Boring stuff," he said, before I could ask who he was talking to. The doorbell rang. A courier stood there with a thick envelope. Gavin signed for it, but then he handed the packet to me with a heavy sigh. "Bad timing. I know, but the broker needs this finalized. You ordered the sale of 20% of your private investment fund last week, before the crash." I stared at the document. Sale authorization. The date was from 4 days ago. At the bottom, my signature was inked in blue. It had the distinctive loop on the capital B and the sharp strike on the T. It looked exactly like my handwriting. I don't remember this." "Gavin," I said, my voice trembling. "That is the concussion talking," he said, his tone dropping to a patronizing whisper. He sat down opposite me, clasping his hands. "Brielle, look, this accident, it made me realize something. You aren't the same. You have been unstable for months, and this crash was just the breaking point. I think we need to separate, for your health and mine. I want a divorce." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Divorce. While I still had stitches in my forehead, I looked away from him, trying to process the sudden assault on my life. My gaze landed on the marble kitchen island. Sitting next to the fruit bowl was a phone. It was a black plastic brick, a cheap prepaid model. Not his sleek smartphone. Not mine. "Is that yours?" I asked, pointing. Gavin's eyes widened a fraction. He stood up, walked over, and swiped the phone into his pocket. "Work phone. Construction site management. High risk of damage. So we use burners. Don't deflect. Brielle." My personal phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen flashed the name of my doctor. I reached for it, desperate for a neutral voice. Gavin was faster. He snatched the phone, hit answer, and turned his back to me. "Hi, doctor." "No, no." She is still very confused. Highly agitated? I think she needs total rest. No visitors. I will handle her medication schedule. Yes, I will keep her offline. Thanks. He hung up and slipped my phone into his pocket alongside the burner. Doctor's orders. No screens. You need to sleep, he said. I will go upstairs and get the guest room ready for you. I think we should sleep separately until the lawyers draft the papers. He walked up the stairs, his footsteps heavy and confident. I waited until I heard the floorboards creak on the second floor. Then I moved. I pulled my laptop from my work bag, which was still sitting by the entryway from the day of the accident. I opened it. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing in my password. I was the operations manager at Crestline Ridge Systems. My brain might be bruised, but my muscle memory for data entry was intact. I logged into our joint bank portal. A red notification banner flashed at the top. Suspicious activity detected. I clicked the details. A transfer of $80,000 had been initiated yesterday while I was in the hospital, sent to a business account I didn't recognize. I closed the laptop gently. I didn't scream. I didn't run upstairs to confront him. Gavin thought I was broken. He thought the accident had turned me into a liability he could write off in a spreadsheet. He thought my memory was gone. He was right about the memory. The last 3 days were a blur. But he forgot that my entire career was built on risk assessment and disaster recovery. I pulled a small, leather-bound notebook from my purse. I uncapped my pen. My hand shook slightly, but I forced it to steady. I wrote the date at the top of the page. 10:15 in the morning, porch conversation regarding a plan. 10:30 in the morning, fraudulent signature on asset liquidation. 10:35 in the morning, divorce demand based on instability. 10:40 in the morning, unidentified burner phone secured by subject. 10:45 in the morning, medical isolation tactic. 10:50 in the morning, unauthorized fund transfer of $80,000 confirmed. I looked at the list. It wasn't a diary. It was the first draft of an audit, and I was going to find every single error. I retreated to the laundry room, the hum of the dryer providing a thin layer of white noise. My hands were steady as I dialed the bank's fraud department, but my heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I did not call as a weeping wife. I called as an operations manager conducting an external audit. I am looking at a transfer of $80,000, I said, my voice flat and professional. I need to understand the authentication protocol used. Specifically, was this a digital signature or a notarized event? The representative typed for a moment, the keys clicking in my ear. One moment. Mrs. Hale, I see the log here. It was an expedited transfer, authorized via a remote online notary session. I frowned, pressing the phone tighter to my ear. Remote online. That requires biometric verification or a live video feed. That is correct. The representative chirped, her tone helpful. The notes say the notary conducted a live session. You? Or rather, the person identified as you. Verified identity via video, very clearly. It is all recorded in the transaction archive. A chill started at the base of my neck and spiraled down my spine. I see, I managed to say, my throat suddenly dry. Can you tell me the timestamp of that session, October 14th at 2 in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time? I thanked her and hung up. I did not scream. I walked back to the kitchen table and opened my laptop. October 14th, 2 in the afternoon. I pulled up my work calendar. At that exact time, I was not sitting in front of a webcam approving a massive wire transfer. I was in Conference Room B at Crestline Ridge Systems, leading a quarterly operations review. There were 11 people in that room. I accessed the company server and pulled the security logs. There it was, my key card swiped into the room at 1:55 in the afternoon and swiped out at 3:30. There was even a video file of the meeting saved in the compliance drive. I had an 11-person alibi and digital proof that the woman in that bank video was an imposter. I didn't confront Gavin yet. Information was leverage, and right now, I didn't have enough. I opened a new cloud storage account, completely separate from our shared family plan. I named the main folder Meal Prep 2025, a title so mundane Gavin would never click on it even if he hacked my device. Inside, I created 4 subfolders: bank, legal, devices, and timeline. I uploaded the security logs and the screenshot of the bank transfer immediately. Gavin was upstairs in the shower. I could hear the pipes rattling. I needed physical access. I slipped into the garage. The air smelled of gasoline and old cardboard, but when I opened the passenger door of Gavin's SUV, a different scent hit me. It was heavy, floral and expensive. Gardenia and musk. I have never worn floral perfume in my life. I ran my hand under the passenger seat, my fingers brushing against the carpet. I felt the sharp edge of a piece of stiff paper. I pulled it out. It was a valet parking ticket. Louisville, I whispered to myself, repeating the lie Gavin had told me. He said he was at a conference in Louisville, Kentucky. I looked at the ticket. It was stamped with the logo of a luxury hotel in Indianapolis, Indiana. The date matched the day of my accident. He hadn't been rushing home from a conference in Kentucky to be by my side. He had been 2 hours away in the opposite direction. I shoved the ticket into my pocket and went back inside. On the kitchen counter, the cheap black burner phone was buzzing softly. Gavin must have left it when he went up to shower, confident that my memory loss made me harmless. I picked it up. The screen was locked. I stared at the keypad. If this was a burner, he wouldn't use a complex code. He would use something ingrained in his muscle memory. I typed in our wedding date 0612. The lock screen dissolved. My stomach dropped. The audacity of it was almost impressive. He was using the day we vowed to be faithful to hide his betrayal. I opened the messages. There was only one conversation thread, labeled simply as K.S. I scrolled up, my eyes scanning the blue bubbles. It wasn't just a flirty exchange. It was a logistical coordination. Then I saw the message sent just 10 minutes ago, while he was on the porch. She is clueless. The doctor bought the instability narrative. And the reply from K.S. Good. After the sale. Let her keep the debt. We disappear. My hand trembled, but not from fear. It was pure, cold rage. The battery icon in the corner of the burner phone turned red, 4% remaining. I couldn't take the phone. If he noticed it was missing, he would wipe everything remotely. I pulled out my own phone. I didn't just take pictures. I switched to video mode. I recorded the screen as I scrolled through the entire text thread, capturing every timestamp, every word, and the contact details for K.S. I then took photos of the device's IMEI number found in the settings. We disappear. I read the words on the screen one last time, my voice barely a whisper. No, Gavin, you don't get to disappear. I heard the water shut off upstairs. I wiped the screen of the burner phone on my shirt to remove my fingerprints and placed it back on the counter, exactly 2 inches from the edge, just as he had left it. I walked to the fridge and pulled out a pitcher of water, my movements mechanical. When Gavin walked into the kitchen 5 minutes later, drying his hair with a towel, I was pouring a glass of water. I took a sip, the cool liquid sliding down my throat, and smiled at him. It was the first lie of my counter-offensive. Gavin walked back into the living room with a bounce in his step that made my stomach churn. He had loosened his tie, and there was a flush on his cheeks that usually appeared after he closed a big contract. But today, the contract was the dismantling of our marriage. It is done, he announced, dropping onto the sofa opposite me. He let out a long, exaggerated exhale. The initial liquidation is processing. Honestly, Brielle, this is going to make the separation so much easier. Liquid assets are cleaner to divide. No messy property disputes. He leaned forward, his face arranging itself into a mask of pity. I know this is hard, but look at you. You are trembling. Since the accident, you are just not yourself. You are fragile. This divorce is the kindest thing I can do for you. It removes the pressure of being a wife while you recover." I forced my shoulders to slump, shrinking into the cushions. I needed him to believe his own narrative. I needed him to think I was the broken, confused woman he wanted me to be. "I suppose you are right," I said, keeping my voice thin and wavery. "I feel so lost. Gavin, everything is a blur. Like, I thought you said you were in meetings all day yesterday in Louisville, but my head keeps telling me you were driving." Gavin didn't blink. He smiled. That practiced, patient smile he used on difficult clients. "See, that is the confusion talking. Honey, I flew into Louisville. I had back-to-back meetings at the convention center, then caught the 7 o'clock flight home. You are mixing up days." I nodded slowly, hiding the flash of triumph in my eyes. The valet ticket in the garage was from Indianapolis, a 2-hour drive from Louisville. And I had checked the flight logs on my phone while he was showering. There was no 7 o'clock flight from Louisville to Columbus yesterday. He was lying, and he was getting sloppy because he thought I was too brain damaged to notice. Maybe you are right," I murmured. "My head hurts so much. I think I signed things I do not remember." "Exactly," he said, seizing on my doubt. "You get these paranoid episodes. You signed the transfer authorization right here. Brielle, you were sitting at this very table. You do not remember it because of the trauma. That is why I need to take over the finances, to protect you from your own memory gaps." He reached out to pat my hand. I suppressed the urge to recoil. "Gavin," I said, looking up with wide, pleading eyes. "Could you make us a drink, just a gin and tonic? I think it might help my nerves." He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure. 1 drink. To calm you down." He stood up and walked to the wet bar in the corner of the dining room. The moment his back was turned, the clinking of ice against glass covering the sound of my movements, I slipped into the walk-in pantry. I moved the large box of oatmeal on the bottom shelf, revealing a small, heavy steel safe bolted to the floor. Years ago, we both had access. Then, 3 years back, I noticed $5,000 in emergency cash had vanished. Gavin had claimed we had a break-in, but there was no forced entry. I never said a word. I just quietly reset the biometric lock to accept only my fingerprint. He never asked about it because asking would mean admitting he had tried to open it again. I pressed my thumb against the scanner. The light turned green. Click. I pulled the thick envelope of the stock sale documents from under my sweater, where I had hidden it, and shoved it inside. I also placed a small USB drive there, a backup of the video I had taken of his burner phone. Then, I grabbed the physical printouts I had made earlier of the bank logs and the valet ticket photo. I locked them all inside. The safe beeped once as it sealed. I slid the oatmeal box back into place just as I heard Gavin's footsteps approaching the kitchen. I stepped out of the pantry, grabbing a box of crackers as a prop. "Here," Gavin said, handing me a glass. He took a long sip of his own drink, watching me over the rim. "Brielle, I have been thinking, do you remember exactly what Dr. Evans said about your prognosis? Did he mention long-term institutional care?" My blood ran cold. He wasn't just making conversation. He was fishing. He wanted to know if the doctor had given me a diagnosis he could use to legally declare me incompetent, if he could prove I was mentally unfit. He wouldn't just get a divorce. He would get conservatorship. He would control everything. I don't know," I stammered, taking a sip of the gin to hide the tremor in my lip. He said I need rest. "Why, just checking," Gavin said, relaxing slightly. "I want to make sure we are prepared for whatever comes next." I looked at him, really looked at him. The handsome face I had loved for a decade was gone. In its place was a stranger who viewed my life as a failed asset he needed to liquidate. He thought the accident was his lucky break. He thought he had me cornered. But as the gin hit my stomach, I felt a cold clarity wash over me. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight him tonight. That would only trigger his instability narrative. No, I would be quiet. I would let him think he was winning. I needed to build a firewall. I needed to separate my credit, secure my legal standing, and document every single lie before he realized the glitch in his plan was me. I am tired, Gavin, I said softly. I think I will go to bed. Good idea, he said, turning back to his phone, already dismissing me. I walked up the stairs, leaving him to his victory drink. He didn't know it yet, but the audit had just begun. And unlike him, I never left a paper trail I couldn't explain. Nora Vale did not offer me a tissue. She did not pat my hand or tell me that everything happens for a reason. She sat behind a desk made of glass and steel, looking at my spreadsheet with the intensity of a hawk spotting a field mouse. I do not need your tears, Mrs. Hart. I need your receipts, Nora said, her voice sharp and devoid of sympathy. She tapped a manicured fingernail on the paper. You have proof of the unauthorized transfer. The forged signature I do, I said, pulling the flash drive from my purse. It is all here. Timestamps, location data, and the bank logs. Good, she said, sliding a retainer agreement across the desk. Then we stopped the bleeding. Today, right now. I left her office with a battle plan burning in my mind. I did not go home. I drove to a bank on the other side of town, one where Gavin and I had no history. I opened a new checking account solely in my name. I called my company's HR department from the parking lot. This is Brielle Hart. I need to update my direct deposit information immediately. Yes, effective for this pay period. No. The old account is compromised. Step 1 complete. My income was now mine again. I sat in my car, the engine idling, and opened my laptop. I logged into the 3 major credit bureaus, one by one. I froze my credit. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. If Gavin tried to open a credit card or take out a loan in my name to fund his new life, he would hit a brick wall. Next came the alerts. I logged into our joint accounts. I did not change the passwords yet. If I locked him out, he would panic and might accelerate his plan. Instead, I set up push notifications for every single transaction over $1. Every time he bought a coffee or paid a bill, I would know. I was not stopping him. I was tracking him. Then came the digital fortress. I bought a prepaid SIM card at a convenience store and swapped it into an old phone I kept in my glove box. I went through my email, my cloud storage, and my investment portals. I changed every password to a random string of 20 characters. I set up 2-factor authentication, but instead of my regular number, I linked it to the prepaid SIM. Gavin could have my phone. He could clone my number, but he would never get the codes. I arrived home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The house was empty. I moved quickly. I had bought 3 small motion-activated cameras. I placed the first one on top of the kitchen cabinets, hidden behind a decorative vine. I placed the second on a bookshelf in the living room, wedged between 2 thick novels. The third went into the garage, aimed directly at Gavin's parking spot. When Gavin came home an hour later, I was standing in the kitchen, looking anxious. Gavin, I said, wringing my hands. Mrs. Robinson down the street. She said someone tried to break into her shed. I am scared. I bought some cameras. Gavin laughed, a dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. Babe, you are paranoid. That is the anxiety talking again. Please, I whispered. Just for my peace of mind. He rolled his eyes. Fine. If it makes you stop shaking, put them up. Just do not ask me to configure them. He didn't know they were already recording. He didn't know that his dismissal was exactly what I was counting on. While he watched television, I went room to room with my phone. I took photos of every serial number on our electronics. I photographed his watch collection, my jewelry, and the expensive art on the walls. I uploaded the photos to my secure cloud instantly. If anything disappeared, or if he tried to claim he sold them months ago, the metadata on these photos would prove they were in the house today. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Nora. Motion filed. Emergency freeze on joint assets pending judge approval. We should have the order by tomorrow morning. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I was catching up. I was no longer the victim in the passenger seat. I was grabbing the wheel. I sat down to check the latest transaction log from our joint checking account one last time before bed. My eyes scanned the list of mundane expenses. Gas, groceries, dry cleaning. Then I stopped. There was a recurring payment of $2,500 labeled Simply Consulting Retainer. It had gone out on the first of every month for the last 6 months. I clicked on the transaction details. The recipient was an entity called Obsidian Strategy LLC. I had never heard of it. Gavin worked in commercial construction. He didn't hire strategy consultants. I copied the name and pasted it into my investigation folder. "Who are you?" I whispered to the screen. "And why is my husband paying you the price of a used car every month?" The game was changing. This wasn't just about a mistress or a hidden bank account. Gavin was paying for something professional, and I had a sickening feeling that I was the project they were consulting on. I baited the trap over a simple plate of grilled chicken. The house was quiet, the air thick with the unspoken tension of a marriage that was rotting from the inside out. "Gavin," I said, my voice deliberately innocent, keeping my eyes on my fork. I was looking at the credit card statement to jog my memory. "You said you landed at 7 in the evening." "Right. But there is a charge for the airport toll road at 6:15. How did you pay the toll before the plane landed?" Gavin froze. His fork hovered halfway to his mouth. For a second, the calculation behind his eyes was visible. He was cycling through lies, looking for one that fit. Then he chose anger. "Are you checking up on me?" he snapped, dropping his silverware with a clatter. "I am taking care of you, handling everything because your brain is practically mush, and you are auditing my travel times. You really are losing it. Brielle, you are paranoid. I can't do this tonight." He stood up, grabbed his keys, and stormed out. He didn't slam the door. He closed it with the heavy, mournful finality of a man who wanted the neighbors to see him leaving in distress. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it. I didn't cry. I checked my watch. It took exactly 20 minutes for the social fallout to begin. My phone lit up with a text from a mutual friend. "Sarah, just saw Gavin at the bar. He looks wrecked. Brielle, he is so worried about your mental state. Maybe you should let him come home. You are pushing away the only person trying to save you." Another message followed from a neighbor. "We are praying for you. Gavin told us about the outbursts. Please get help." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. He hadn't just gone for a drive. He had gone on a PR campaign. He was seeding the narrative that I was the aggressor, the unstable wife driving the saintly husband away. Then Tessa called, my best friend, my college roommate. "Brielle," she said, her voice dropping to a hush. "Gavin just texted me. He is asking if I can come stay with you because he is afraid to be alone in the house with you right now." Afraid I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Tessa, he is lying. I don't know. Bri," she hesitated. "He called me a month ago, before the accident. He asked me if, well, he asked if you had ever had a psychotic break before. He wanted to know about psychological evaluations and divorce proceedings. He sounded so scared for you back then." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. A month ago, I whispered, "Yeah. He said you were acting erratic." I told him no, obviously, but, Brielle, if he was worried back then, maybe the accident just made it worse. I hung up. I didn't feel betrayed by Tessa. She was just another piece on his board. I felt a cold, hard knot of fury in my stomach. Gavin hadn't reacted to the accident. He had been waiting for it. He had been painting me as crazy for weeks, priming everyone so that when the time came, nobody would believe the woman with the concussion. I opened my laptop. Gavin had posted a status update on his social media 5 minutes ago. No names. Just a vague black background with white text. Sometimes the hardest thing is watching the person you love disappear into their own mind. Walking away for safety tonight. Heartbroken. I took a screenshot. I saved it to the legal folder. I didn't comment. I didn't react. Silence was my shield. Suddenly, a series of notifications pinged from the bank app. Logan, failed. Logan, failed. Account locked. Gavin was trying to access the joint accounts. He had realized the money wasn't moving. He was panicking. Then, my email refreshed. A new message appeared at the top of my inbox. The subject line was odd, urgent, and clearly not meant for my eyes. FW divorce strategy. Instability narrative, urgent. I frowned. The sender was a generic consulting alias, likely an autofill mistake or a hasty forward where he forgot to scrub the history. I clicked it open. It was a draft plan from a crisis management firm or a legal strategist. The text was clinical and brutal. Objective leverage medical trauma to invalidate prenup. Action item. Assign $50,000 of credit card debt to wife under the guise of manic spending habits. See attached schedule. My eyes scanned down the chain. There was a reply from Gavin, sent 2 days ago. Make sure the debt is linked to the LLC. I want her buried. And there, at the bottom of the email thread, was a system footprint, a technical header showing the IP address where the document was created. IP address 192.168.1.1. Origin. The Grand Meridian Hotel, Indianapolis, Indiana. I stopped breathing for a moment. The document wasn't just discussing debt. It referenced a company called Hale Meridian LLC. And right there, at the bottom of the email chain, was the smoking gun. The IP address proved he was there, and the timestamp proved he was doing it while I was lying in a hospital bed. I sat back in the dark kitchen, the glow of the laptop illuminating my face. Gavin thought he was destroying a fragile, confused woman. He didn't realize he had just handed the operations manager the master key to his own destruction. The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the kitchen as I stared at the Secretary of State's business registry. My breath hitched in my throat. The filing for Hale Meridian LLC did not list Gavin as the owner. Registered agent. Brielle Hart. I read aloud, the name mocking me from the screen. He hadn't just stolen money, he was setting me up. If this company was laundering money or accumulating debt, the federal agents would come looking for me, not him. He was building a bomb and strapping it to my chest while I slept. I needed physical proof. Digital logs were good, but I needed something he couldn't explain away as a glitch. My mind raced back to a week before the accident. I had seen a small, brass key in the back of Gavin's filing cabinet, tagged with a yellow plastic label that read, Unit 614. At the time, I assumed it was for a client's project site, but clients didn't use secure keep storage, a rundown facility on the gritty edge of town. I ran to his home office. He had left in such a hurry to play the victim at the bar that he hadn't locked his desk. The key was still there, buried under a stack of old tax returns. I grabbed it, the cold metal biting into my palm. 30 minutes later, I parked my car a block away from the storage facility. It was past midnight, and the rows of orange metal doors looked like prison cells under the buzzing floodlights. I walked to the keypad at the main gate. I didn't know the code, but I knew my husband. Gavin was a creature of habit, lazy with his security because he believed he was smarter than everyone else. I punched in the last 4 digits of his social security number, followed by the hash key. The gate groaned and slid open. Got you, I whispered, stepping into the shadows. I found Unit 614 down a long, concrete corridor. The brass key slid into the padlock with a satisfying click. I rolled the metal door up just enough to slip under, then pulled it down behind me. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the dusty air and landed on what looked like a bunker. This wasn't a storage unit for old furniture. It was a center of operations. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with boxes of high-end electronics drones, cameras, tablets still in their shrink wrap. He was buying assets with our money and hiding them here. In the center of the room sat a folding table with an old laptop and a whiteboard. I walked closer to the board, and the air left my lungs. It was titled Exit Plan Quarter 4. A timeline was drawn in black marker. Phase 1 liquidation. Checked off. Phase 2 transfer assets to LLC. Checked off. Phase 3 the narrative. Next to Phase 3, circled in angry red ink, were the words accident equals instability. Use medical reports to discredit. He planned to use the crash. I choked out, my hand flying to my mouth. He is not reacting to my injury. He is weaponizing it. I moved to the table, my hands shaking. A stack of papers sat under a paperweight. I flipped through them. Hotel invoices from the Grand Meridian in Indianapolis. Dates October 12th through the 15th. He wasn't in Louisville. He was 2 hours away, building a shadow life while I was sitting in meetings. And there was a confirmation for a mobile notary service, booked for the exact time I was allegedly signing documents online. And then, underneath the invoices, I found the book. It was a standard spiral-bound notebook. I opened it. Page after page was filled with a single phrase, Brielle Hart. My name, written hundreds of times in blue ink. Some attempts were crossed out with notes in the margins in Gavin's handwriting, too much pressure on the loop, or slant is too steep, and hide the hesitation point. He hadn't just forged my signature once. He had practiced. He had studied my handwriting like a dedicated student learning a new language. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was premeditated identity theft. I pulled out my phone. I didn't just take photos. I recorded a slow, high-resolution video of the entire room. I zoomed in on the whiteboard, capturing the accident equals instability note. I flipped through the notebook on camera, ensuring Gavin's handwriting notes were legible. I captured the serial numbers on the electronics boxes and the hotel invoices. I have you, I whispered, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and dark satisfaction. I have everything. I put the notebook back exactly as I found it, aligning the edges with the dust marks on the table. I couldn't let him know I had been here. Not yet. I needed him to feel safe. I needed him to walk into the courtroom thinking he was the smartest man in the room. I rolled the door up, slipped out, and locked the padlock. As I wiped the keypad at the gate with my sleeve to remove my prints, I realized something. Gavin thought he was playing chess against a confused, emotional wife. He didn't know the board had just changed. He was no longer the player. He was the evidence. I arranged the kitchen island not like a dining table, but like an autopsy slab. I placed the objects with precise, equidistant spacing. In the center sat the black burner phone. To its left, the thick manila envelope containing the loan documents. To its right, a blown-up high-resolution photograph of the signature from the sale authorization next to a sample of my actual signature. And right in front, stuck to the granite, was a yellow sticky note with 5 words written in my sharp, unshakable hand. This is not my signature. I stood on the other side of the island, leaning against the sink, waiting. The garage door opened. Gavin walked in, tossing his keys into the bowl. He looked tired but confident, the look of a man who thought he had successfully managed a difficult employee. "Hey, babe." I got takeout from his voice died in his throat. He stopped 3 feet from the island. His eyes flicked from the burner phone to the photo, then to me. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, ash gray. Wow. He let out a dry, forced chuckle that sounded like sandpaper. Arts and crafts time. What is this? Brielle. It is an audit, I said, my voice steady and cold. You went through my things. His face twisted into a snarl, the mask of the concerned husband slipping completely. I am trying to keep this family afloat while you recover, and you are violating my privacy. This is exactly why the doctor said you are unstable. I didn't flinch. I didn't defend myself. I simply began to read the list I had memorized. The unexpected loan of $50,000. The remote online notary session dated October 14th, time-stamped while I was in a board meeting. The formation of Hale Meridian LLC using my social security number. And the text message to K.S. that says, "Let her keep the debt." Gavin stiffened. He looked at the burner phone again, his hands twitching at his sides. "You are misunderstanding everything," he said, his voice rising, trying to regain control of the room. "I signed those papers for you. You were in the hospital. You were incapacitated. I was trying to save our assets before the market dipped, and I knew you would agree to it if you were lucid. I did it to protect us." "To protect us?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "By transferring $80,000 to a shell company I do not own, by planning to saddle me with debt and disappear. That is your paranoia talking," he shouted, slamming his hand on the counter. "You are confused. You are mixing up dates and conversations because of the head trauma. Do you really think a judge is going to believe a woman who can't even remember where she parked her car?" He was sweating now. I could see the beads forming on his forehead. He realized the narrative was slipping away from him. Suddenly, he lunged. He didn't come for me. He reached across the island, his hand clawing for the black burner phone. I didn't move to stop him. I didn't need to. The small camera hidden in the vines above the cabinets blinked silently, recording the image of a man desperately trying to destroy evidence. He grabbed the phone and shoved it into his pocket, his chest heaving. "Give me the phone." "Gavin," I said calmly, "no. This is my property." "And you are sick." He spat. "It does not matter," I said, crossing my arms. "I have already downloaded the entire contents. The text logs, the location data, the photos. My lawyer, Nora, has a copy on an encrypted drive. If you destroy that phone, it becomes spoliation of evidence. It turns a civil dispute into a criminal cover-up." Gavin froze. The fight seemed to leave his body, replaced by a dark, venomous look I had never seen before. He leaned over the counter, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You want to play hardball, Brielle, fine. But think about this. If you drag me through the mud, you drag yourself too. A fraud investigation, a public scandal. Your company relies on stability. They handle sensitive risk assessments. Do you think they will keep an operations manager who is embroiled in a messy, high-profile financial fraud case? You will lose your job. You will lose everything." It was a good threat. It was calculated to hit my deepest insecurity, my career. But before I could answer, my personal phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up. Fraud Prevention Department. I looked at Gavin. I picked up the phone and pressed the speaker button. "This is Brielle Hart," I said, "Mrs. Hart. This is the escalation team." The voice on the other end was clear and loud in the silent kitchen. "We have been reviewing the metadata for the notarized video session you flagged. We have traced the IP address of the device used to authorize the transaction. It does not match your home network. It originated from a secure guest network at the Grand Meridian Hotel in Indianapolis." Gavin's face went white. He stared at the phone as if it were a bomb. "We need to confirm for the record." The agent continued. "Did you authorize a remote transaction from Indianapolis on October 14th? I looked straight into Gavin's eyes. I saw the panic there, the realization that there was no story, no lie, no gaslighting technique that could fix this. "No," I said clearly, my voice ringing with finality. "I was in Columbus. I did not participate in that session. That was not me." The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. I watched Gavin's future collapse in real time. He wasn't just a bad husband anymore. He was a suspect, and I was the witness who had just closed the cage door. The vibration of my phone on the nightstand was a jarring intrusion into the silence of the guest room. It was 3 a.m. I reached for the device, my eyes adjusting to the harsh blue light. The number was unknown, but the message was a lifeline thrown from the dark. "Do not trust him. He plans to pin the LLC on you. He is setting up the fall guy, and it is you. A second bubble appeared 3 seconds later. Kara. My breath hitched. K.S. The woman from the burner phone. The woman I assumed was just a mistress. But as I read the words, the pieces clicked together with a sickening precision. A mistress hides in the shadows. A consultant builds them. Kara Sloan wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was the architect of his financial escape. Their relationship was transactional sex and strategy intertwined. And now that the bank was investigating, she was cutting her losses. "Why are you telling me this?" I typed back, my fingers trembling. "Because I do consulting. Not prison time," she replied. "He has a folder of emails sent from your personal account. They explicitly authorize the transfers to the shell company. He spoofed your login." I sat up, the duvet falling away. Gavin hadn't just forged a signature, he had manufactured a digital confession. If those emails surfaced, he could claim I was the mastermind, or worse, that in my confused state, I had done it myself and forgotten. I didn't sleep. At 8 in the morning, I was in Nora's office. We drafted an emergency subpoena to my email service provider and the company IT department. "We need the access logs," I told Nora, my voice tight. "If emails were sent from my account, I need to know what device sent them." By noon, the report was in my inbox. I scanned the rows of data until I found the dates in question, the days immediately following my accident, while I was supposedly sedated or sleeping. There were 3 logins. Origin IP address, 192.168. Location the Grand Meridian Hotel. Indianapolis. Indiana. "Got him," Nora whispered, staring at the screen. The emails confessing to the transfers were sent from the same hotel room where Gavin was staying with Kara. He had logged in as me, using the password I hadn't changed until yesterday, and framed me from 200 miles away. But Gavin was still fighting a different war. He was fighting for the court of public opinion. My phone pinged with a message from Tessa. "Brielle, can we talk? Gavin is here. He is showing me these emails. He says you are trying to frame him because you are paranoid. He is crying. Bree, he looks devastated." I didn't argue. I didn't type a long defense. "Come to the house." I replied, "Bring him." An hour later, Tessa sat in my living room, looking torn. Gavin sat opposite her, his head in his hands, playing the part of the exhausted, martyred husband to perfection. "I just want her to get help." "Tessa," Gavin said, his voice cracking. I tried to cover for her bad financial decisions because I didn't want to embarrass her. But now she is twisting everything. Tessa looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Brielle, maybe you just don't remember sending the emails. The trauma." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply placed my laptop on the coffee table and turned the screen toward them. On the left side of the screen was the company meeting log Brielle Hart, present in Columbus, Ohio, 2 in the afternoon. On the right side was the metadata from the email Gavin claimed I sent from Indianapolis, Indiana, 2:10 in the afternoon, unless I have learned to teleport. "Tessa," I said, my voice dead calm. "I did not send that email. And unless Gavin has a twin, there is only one person who was in Indianapolis that day." Tessa stared at the screen. She looked at the timestamp. Then she looked at the hotel invoice I slid across the table, the one with Gavin's name on it. The silence in the room was absolute. I watched the realization wash over Tessa's face. The pity vanished, replaced by a cold, dawning horror. She shifted her body away from Gavin, physically creating distance on the sofa. "Gavin," Tessa said, her voice shaking. "You said you were in Louisville." Gavin's head snapped up. The sorrowful act evaporated. He looked at the laptop, then at Tessa, and he realized the audience had left the theater. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need a moment with my wife," he demanded, his eyes hard. "Tessa, leave." Tessa looked at me. I nodded. "It is okay." Go. She hurried out, closing the front door with a slam that echoed like a gavel. Gavin turned to me. The mask was gone. He looked cornered. Feral. How much, he asked. Excuse me, how much do you want? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You want the house? Take it. You want half the cash. Fine. Just stop the investigation. Call the bank and tell them it was a misunderstanding. If this goes to the feds, nobody gets anything. We both go down in flames. I am not going down anywhere. Gavin, I said, standing my ground. I did not steal anything. You think you are so smart with your little audit. He sneered. But you don't know where the bulk of it is. You will never find the liquidity. It is gone. I tilted my head, studying him. He was trying to bluff, but his hands were shaking. Is it gone, Gavin? I asked softly. Or is it sitting in the account for Skyline Holdings? The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Skyline Holdings. It was the name on a crumpled invoice I had seen in the storage unit, a blink and you miss it detail on a scrap of paper in the recycling bin of Unit 614. I hadn't been sure until this exact moment, but his reaction was a confession. How? He choked out, stepping back. How do you know that name? Because I pay attention to the details you throw away. I said, and now that I know the name, the forensic accountant will find the routing number by morning. Gavin slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He wasn't crying for me. He wasn't crying for our marriage. He was crying because he realized that the wife he tried to write off as a liability had just become the judge, jury, and executioner of his life. The legal filing Nora Vale submitted on Monday morning was not just a motion, it was a demolition order. We did not hold anything back. The binder contained high-resolution scans of the handwriting practice notebook, the photos of the exit plan whiteboard from the storage unit, the IP logs from the hotel, and the video of Gavin lunging at me in the kitchen to destroy the burner phone. By noon, the judge had seen enough. The court issued an emergency temporary restraining order and a complete asset freeze. Gavin was barred from entering the house, accessing our accounts, or contacting me directly. He was now a ghost in his own life, forced to speak only through the expensive lawyer he could no longer pay for with our joint funds. Then the second shoe dropped. I received a certified letter from the bank's fraud department. The language was dry, bureaucratic, and terrifying. They were opening a formal investigation into the identity theft and unauthorized wire transfers. The last paragraph was the most important. If evidence of criminal intent is found, this file will be referred to federal authorities. It was the leverage I needed, and I wasn't the only one who felt the heat. My phone rang. It was Nora. We have a caller, Nora said, her voice devoid of emotion. Ms. Kara Sloan wants to talk. She says she has documents regarding the formation of the LLC. She is offering them in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement and a promise that we do not name her as a co-conspirator in the civil suit. She is scared, I said, staring at the rain hitting the kitchen window. She is terrified, Nora corrected. She knows the bank is involved. She does not want to go to prison for a man who is already drowning. She sent over a sample. It is a text chain where Gavin explicitly instructs her on how to structure the shell company to hide assets from the wife. Take it, I said, but Nora, do not trust her. Use her information as a roadmap, but I want independent verification for every single claim. I want bank logs, timestamps, and server receipts. If Kara says the sky is blue, I want a meteorological report to back it up. I was not interested in revenge against the mistress. She was a symptom, not the disease. My target was Gavin. Gavin, however, was not going down quietly. His lawyer sent a response 2 days later. It was a vicious, scorched earth document. He was pivoting from the concerned husband to the victim of a mentally unstable spouse. The brief claimed that my post-concussive syndrome had rendered me paranoid and incompetent. He was petitioning the court to appoint a guardian ad litem to manage my affairs, essentially. He was trying to legally declare me insane so he could invalidate my evidence. He is doubling down on the medical angle, Nora said, reading the document with a scowl. Let him, I said, pulling a folder from my bag. I have my own paper trail. I laid out 3 documents. First, a signed affidavit from Dr. Evans stating that my cognitive functions were fully intact and my memory issues had resolved within 48 hours of the accident. Second, a performance review from my CEO dated yesterday, praising my handling of a complex crisis at work. Third, statements from 5 colleagues attesting to my mental sharpness. He is trying to gaslight a judge. I said, it won't work. I spent the next night drafting the endgame. I did not write a letter. I wrote a settlement agreement. It was brutal in its simplicity. The terms were clear. Gavin would assume 100% of the debt associated with Hale Meridian LLC. He would sign a confession admitting to the forgery and the unauthorized transfers. In exchange, I would drop the civil suit and request that the bank close their internal investigation without a criminal referral provided. He paid back the $80,000 within 30 days. He will never sign this, Nora warned when she saw the draft. It is an admission of guilt. It ruins him financially. He will sign it, I said, looking at the clause I had added at the bottom. Breach of this agreement results in the immediate release of all attached exhibits to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Why are you so sure? Nora asked. Because right now, he is arrogant, I replied, closing the file. But tomorrow, the bank is going to freeze his personal credit cards. Kara is going to stop answering his calls, and he is going to realize that he is alone in a hotel room he can't afford. I wasn't looking for a fair fight. I was looking for a surrender. I checked the time on my phone. It was 10 at night. I knew Gavin would be pacing, drinking, and waiting for a way out. Set the meeting for tomorrow at 9 in the morning. I told Nora, I want him to look me in the eye when he realizes that the wife he tried to erase is the only one holding the pen. The conference room at the law firm was cold, smelling of stale coffee and expensive leather. Gavin walked in wearing his best navy suit, the one he usually reserved for closing 7-figure deals. He didn't look like a man facing ruin. He looked like a man managing a slightly inconvenient project. He sat down, smoothed his tie, and looked at Nora with a practiced, weary sigh. I just want to state for the record, Gavin said, his voice dropping to a sympathetic baritone as he glanced at his own lawyer. My wife is not well. She has been unstable since the accident. This entire proceeding is a symptom of her trauma. I am just trying to protect her from herself. Nora Vale didn't even blink. She didn't offer a rebuttal or a speech about justice. She simply opened her binder and slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany table. It was a timeline grid. 2 in the afternoon, October 14th. Nora read aloud, her voice dry. Client is physically present in a board meeting at Crestline Ridge Systems, witnessed by 11 people and security cameras. At that exact same minute, a remote notary session is accessed from the Grand Meridian Hotel in Indianapolis. Gavin scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. This is ridiculous. She hacked my accounts. She broke into a storage unit and planted that notebook just to frame me. She is obsessed. She is paranoid. We have the entry logs for the storage facility, Nora continued, sliding the next document across. The gate code used belongs to you. The rental agreement is in your name. And the video of you attempting to physically snatch the evidence in the kitchen that establishes consciousness of guilt. Gavin's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to argue, to spin another lie. But Nora wasn't finished. She placed a fresh email printout on top of the pile. It was time-stamped just 10 minutes ago. And this, Nora said, is a supplementary notice from the bank's fraud unit. They have isolated the device ID used for the video verification. It matches the iPhone registered to your billing address. Mr. Hale, the one sitting in your pocket right now. The silence that followed was absolute. Gavin's lawyer, a sharp man named Miller, stopped writing on his legal pad. He looked at the paper, Then he looked at Gavin. It was the look of a captain realizing his passenger had punched a hole in the hull of the ship. For the first time, Gavin lost his rhythm. His eyes darted around the room. I can explain that," Gavin stammered, his voice thin. "She had access to my phone. She took it." "Stop," Miller said quietly, cutting his client off. He closed his folder. I didn't wait for him to recover. I reached into my bag and pulled out the document I had drafted the night before. I placed the settlement draft on the table between us. "Here is the deal," I said, my voice steady. "You assume 100% of the debt associated with Hale Meridian LLC. You sign an affidavit admitting that the transfers were unauthorized errors on your part to close the fraud investigation. You walk away with nothing but your clothes and your car. I keep the house. I keep my assets." Gavin looked at the document, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "This is blackmail," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "You are extorting me. I won't sign this. I will drag you to court for years." "No," I said, leaning forward until I locked eyes with him. "That is not blackmail. That is a choice between a signature and handcuffs." Gavin looked at Miller for support, but Miller was already packing up his pen. The lawyer leaned in and whispered, low enough to be discreet but loud enough for the room to hear. "If this goes to trial, the bank is legally required to file a federal report given the evidence. Sign it, Gavin, before she changes her mind." Gavin stared at the pen sitting on the document. His chest heaved. He looked at me, searching for a trace of the woman who used to make him coffee in the morning, the woman he thought was weak. But she wasn't there. His hand shook as he picked up the pen. The scratch of the ink against the paper sounded like a scream in the quiet room. He signed his name, not the forged version he had practiced so carefully in his notebook, but his own defeated scrawl. I took the papers and checked the signature. It was valid. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply gathered my files. "You sold everything I had, Gavin," I said, looking down at him one last time. "But you forgot one thing." I know how to audit the truth. I walked out of the office and into the sunlight, finally free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and let's chat. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so more people can hear this story.